Hello, welcome to this video, this quick discussion about modelling and the ever kind of permanent question of what should I use for 3D modelling for video games. Well, the answer to that is the same as you would use for almost any other kind of modelling, because modelling is modelling, and if you use Blender or Silo or Modo or Max or Maya, you can make models for all sorts of different purposes, not just 3D games. But saying that, people want to know which one to choose, which one's the best. And many people will tell you many different things because people have their own opinions. And I can only tell you my experience and the way I think about it, which we'll cover in the next couple of little sections. Okay, so we have all sorts of different options as to what program we can use, and I've got in my mind there are basically two kinds of modelers to look at, or two kinds of applications. There are the suites over on the right hand side, like Blender, Cinema 4D, Modo, Max, etc., Maya, and then there are the actual modelers, which on the other side I've got Silo and Rhino, which I've never used, Wings 3D, Hexagon, for example. They are pure modelers. So the difference between those two things is, for me, in my experience, is that when I use a suite to try and learn, which I did right back in the beginning, I found it overwhelming. If I go into one of my programs down here, let's just minimize that. So I'm in Modo now. So Modo is a suite. It can do anything pretty much you want. You can model with it, you can paint with it, you can set up animations, and you can rig characters. You could do just about anything. So because of that, I've got a lot of different places I can go to. So I've got a Modo room, I've got a modelling room, a UV room, topology and painting and setup and animation and rendering and scripting, and it's even got a VR tab now. And the difficulty I found was all of my modelling that I wanted to learn, all of the tutorials I found were mixed in with other things, and I found it overwhelming to have this kind of great dump truck of information about all sorts of things I didn't need to know dumped on me. So when it really kicked off for me, and when I really kind of understood polymodelling, was when I went to a simpler tool. For me it was Silo, and it just has what I need to do to create a model. That's it. It's got a few other things you can sculpt in it, you can do some texture painting, but generally speaking it's a modeler, and the vast majority of it is keyed towards making a model and nothing else. And that really helped me to understand polymodelling. And then taking that to the next thought, polymodelling is the same across pretty much all these packages. Some of them can do more, but generally speaking the basics of it, the taking a cube and beveling it and reshaping it and adding faces and moving things around, it's all the same across all of the applications. They may have slightly different terminology for it, but all of the theory is the same. So what I learnt in Silo, I took over to Modo and Blender and the various other packages I've used, and it's exactly the same. So for me it's learn the basics of modelling, of polygonal subdivision modelling, because that will carry over to everything, any model you make in any of these packages, except ZBrush and 3D Coat, which are a little bit different. Their polygon tools came a little later in their development, and they're a bit different, let's say that. I wouldn't use them as a beginner, but later on, as you develop and your interests go various different ways, you may head that way. Okay, so that doesn't tell you which one to pick, but it gives you an idea of, well, should I go for a big suite or should I go for a base modeler? And in the next one, we'll have a talk about price. Okay, so price then. You know, if you're starting out, you know, and you're wanting to make models to sell, you're going to have to buy some software. If you're a student that wants to learn how to make models, then there are, you know, student options, but you can't sell on those. So on the basis that you want to sell some models to somebody somewhere, you need to buy, you know, a licensed copy. And with that in mind, I'm going to just go through the, you know, a few thoughts. So over this side of the screen, we've got our big suites, and we've got our two weirdos in the middle. I say weirdos, I don't mean that in a derogatory fashion, I just mean they're different. So I'm going to move those over there because I wouldn't advise them, you know, for starting out. These down here, these suites will cost you, you know, hundreds, maybe over 1,000, and is a big investment in something you're not sure of yet. You may really want to do it, but you may find that when you get to it, actually modelling is really boring and I don't really like it. So, you know, investing, you know, a good chunk of money into it might not be the best idea. So I would probably move those out of the way as well. Rhino similarly is quite expensive, from what I can see. I've never used it, I've never bought it, but I was looking at it and it was in the high hundreds when I checked the license. So I would move that out of the way, and that leaves you with these two, plus any other kind of solo modelling tools that you might have come across. And these two are essentially the two that I would kind of urge you to have a look at. Blender is excellent, and one of its most excellent features is it's free. So it would cost you nothing to give it a go and find out you don't like it, you don't like modelling. And even if you do like modelling, it's an extremely powerful program that will do lots and lots of different things for you. You know, you can really grow in your 3D kind of, you know, experience in it. You could do anything, just about. But I wouldn't discount Silo, because Silo is a great learning tool, and it's around $150. So it's not an awful lot of money, you know, compared to some of the other options. But it is very concise, it's very model oriented, and takes a lot of confusion out of the equation. Okay, so that's a bit about price, and you know, between these two, that's about where it is. And in the next little section, as well as talking about games and such like, I'm going to talk about other ways, you know, that there are to make some money out of 3D models. Okay, so it would be remiss of me to not mention that there are other ways of making money out of 3D. You know, 3D modelling is used in all sorts of aspects of life these days, in terms of, you know, yes, of course it goes in games, movies, augmented or virtual reality, you know, architectural visualization, all sorts of things, you know, just animations, and you know, there are so many different ways 3D models are used, even in terms of you know, just general physics simulations and such like. But you know, there are different ways of doing that. You know, you can go to a brokerage and sell models. Is it the easiest thing in the world to do? No, it's not, because you have to work quite hard to do it. You know, You're not going to just release a few models and then start making, good money, and it keeps coming in. You have to keep doing it. You have to keep plugging away, uploading more to, build up a reputation and a catalogue. You could start working freelance, doing jobs for other people, for architectural visualization people who need some trees, some new trees, or some chairs, or a particular kind of furniture. They all need these things, but they don't all have time to do it, or the skill to do it, because that's not their mind model, their tool set. You might want you might find somebody who's actually making a game and needs some models for it. There are many ways of making some money out of 3D modelling while you're working your way towards the ultimate goal. And there are all sorts of things you can do. It's not the easiest thing in the world. It's not a golden cash cow. It does take hard work, and I've experience of it. I've experience of selling through brokerages, and I can tell you that releasing a couple of models doesn't cut it. You have to keep releasing. You have to keep your catalogue refreshing, so that you're seen regularly, and people buy your current catalogue, your new things, and they look back in your old catalogue and buy that as well, or some of it at least. But it is possible. So yes, there are other ways of doing it, even to the point where you might just become a freelance artist. And I don't mean freelance working for somebody else. I mean freelance in yourself. You could decide to go down the 3D printed route, and sell your own 3D prints, or 3D print designs. You could, offer to, do custom ones for people, in which case they'll come to you with a design, you'll make it, 3D print it and send it to them. You can make some money. So there are all manner of ways, and it's worth looking into it. Games are not the only option, and I think even in the movie industry, you'd be surprised at how many models are used in films that you wouldn't think had a model in them, because they use so much these days, so much. So yes, just a few thoughts on making money from 3D modelling, and funding yourself, whether it's to fund something you enjoy doing, or whether ultimately it's for a career. There are all sorts of things you can do. So in kind of summary, initially I would say Blender or Silo. Initially I would say Blender. If you don't get on with it, if it's too much, then perhaps you go the Silo route, but Silo will cost you like $150, but it is really concise. Learn your modelling, learn your poly modelling. If there's some things within it that I would suggest you really learn, it's polygon flow. While it's not the be all and end all, it's kind of the fundamental. It's kind of a building block, and people buying your models will look for it, because it tells them that you know what you're doing. UV mapping, really important to me personally. If somebody, people who worked for me have provided me with models, and if they've got terrible UV mapping and terrible polyflow, I'm not happy. They go back. I need those to be right. So yes, polyflow, UV mapping, things like that. And if you're starting off, don't start off thinking you're going to be able to make a Ferrari as your first model. Start simple. Coffee mugs, cola cans, things that are of a relatively simple shape. Get that down, understand them, then move on to slightly more complex shapes with, multiple curves and such, like a teapot, for example, which would be like a sphere with a cylinder coming off of it. Just build up gradually. And I tell you that from experience, because when I first started, I wanted to make something really amazing, and it was only when I realised that I'm not making any progress with this. You know, I would get too frustrated and throw things away and get, you know, really, really kind of wound up. It's not till I actually started having some success at smaller things that, you know, I really started to understand things and move forward and get there. So anyway, I hope you found that useful. If you have any questions, stick them in the comments below, and I hope to talk to you in another video.